A machine can be killed by its own perfection. Corporate accountants do not believe in ghosts. They believe in assembly lines. They believe in margins, scale, and predictable family cars that fill a balance sheet. But in the early 1990s, the engineers at Volkswagen committed a beautiful act of rebellion. They took a broken down sports coupe and gave it a heart so brilliant, so stubborn, that the company couldn't control it. They built a masterpiece, and then they had to destroy it. In the late 1980s, Volkswagen was trapped in its own success. They were the masters of the sensible family hatchback. They built predictable, honest cars for the middle class. But deep inside the design studios, the engineers grew restless. They wanted a purebred sports coupe, a machine that didn't care about groceries or child seats. They sketched a low-wide aggressive silhouette. They called it the Corrado. But to build it, they had to step out of their mass production comfort zone. They handed the blueprint to Karmann, the legendary old-world coach builders in Osnabrück. This would not be stamped out by the millions on a robotic assembly line. It would be hand-assembled by craftsmen. But a premium sports car needs a premium heart, and Volkswagen's corporate board was terrified of turbochargers. Too complicated, they argued. Too unreliable for a brand built on common sense durability. Instead, they forced a bizarre spiral-shaped supercharger into a tiny 1.8-liter engine, the G60. It was an engineering nightmare. The supercharger was highly complex and incredibly fragile. Instead of delivering smooth power, the internal seals tore themselves to pieces. The Corrado was born sick. Buyers stayed away. The automotive press called it an expensive, unreliable failure. The corporate accountants began sharpening their knives to kill the car before it could even walk. The sensible hatchback company had tried to build a hero, and they had engineered a disaster. The accountants wanted to bury the car. The engineers refused to surrender. They knew the Corrado didn't need to be scrapped. It just needed muscle. It needed a 6-cylinder heart. But the corporate suits presented them with a physical impossibility. The Corrado's engine bay was tiny. It was built for small 4-cylinder commuter engines. A traditional V6 engine was far too wide to fit sideways between the wheels. A straight 6 engine was far too long. The board told them to pack up their tools. The math said it couldn't be done. So the engineers went rogue. They bypassed the modern textbooks and dug into forgotten engineering concepts from the 1920s. They decided to reinvent the architecture of the internal combustion engine. They took 6 cylinders and squeezed them together. Not at a wide, comfortable 90-degree angle, but at a razor-thin, claustrophobic 15 degrees. The pistons were staggered so tightly they practically rubbed shoulders. By packing them that close, both banks of cylinders could share one single compact cylinder head. They called it the VR6. It was a masterclass in mechanical stubbornness. A heavy six-cylinder powerhouse crammed into a physical space no larger than a standard four-cylinder block. The accountants were bypassed, the engine fit, and it was angry. In 1992, Volkswagen dropped the VR6 into the Corrado. The fragile broken coupe was instantly transformed into a backroad predator. But they didn't just change the engine. They rebuilt the car's entire architecture to handle the violence. They installed the plus axle front suspension setup. They widened the track, threw on a massive 280mm brake discs, and upgraded to a heavy-duty 5-lug wheel pattern. They wanted a car that could cut through a corner like a scalpel, despite carrying a heavy iron block over the front nose. And then they gave it a brain. Long before active aerodynamics became a staple on million-dollar supercars, Volkswagen built a motorized wing directly into the Corrado's rear hatch. When the needle crossed 45 miles per hour, the wing woke up. It automatically rose out of the bodywork into the airflow. It wasn't a visual gimmick. It altered the physics of the car, reducing rear aerodynamic lift by 64% to pin the rear tires to the asphalt. The car didn't lean through sweeps. It felt heavy, low, and anchored. Automotive journalists who had mocked the early models suddenly declared the VR6 one of the best handling front-wheel drive machines ever built. To clear the massive new cylinder head, the designers had to alter the car's skin. They raised the entire center line of the hood, stamping a distinct, aggressive bulge directly above the engine bay. It was a subtle, metallic warning to anyone pulling up alongside it. Inside the cabin, the utilitarian heritage of the Golf was gone. The factory bolted down deep, aggressively bolstered Recaro sports seats to hold the driver against the cornering forces. The dashboard was angled sharply toward the driver, creating a tight, clinical cockpit. But the true defining characteristic of the VR6 wasn't something you could see. It was the sound. Because of the engine's bizarre, uneven firing order and its single-cylinder head, it didn't sound like any other six-cylinder on Earth. It possessed a thick, heavy off-beat growl. Enthusiasts called it the Wookie Warble. It was a low-frequency, metallic snarl that vibrated in your chest when the throttle snapped open. It revved with a smooth, relentless mechanical rhythm that felt completely unbothered by the red line. Volkswagen hadn't just saved the Corrado, they had given it a soul. The VR6 engine had saved the Corrado's life, but it also sealed its fate. Volkswagen looked at the incredible engine their engineers had built. Then they looked at the sales sheets. The Corrado was hand-assembled at Karman. It was expensive, slow to build, and only a few thousand people were buying it each year. But the engine itself was an absolute masterpiece. The corporate suits realized they didn't need the expensive low-slung coupe to sell the magic of the VR6. They could mass-produce the engine on automated lines and drop it directly into their cheap everyday family hatchback. In 1992, the same year the Corrado got its 6-cylinder hat, Volkswagen introduced the Golf MK3 GTI VR6. The exclusive elite weapon was stripped of its exclusivity. Why would a regular buyer pay premium Karman prices for a sports coupe when they could get the exact same mechanical heartbeat, the exact same growl, inside a practical, cheaper, 3-door hatchback? The Corrado's identity was drained into the mass market. It spent its final 3 years watching its own hat become a common commodity on the assembly line. By 1995, the numbers made no sense to the board. The Golf VR6 was selling by the tens of thousands, while the Corrado lingered in the margins. The plug was pulled. The car didn't leave behind a rivalry or change a racing championship. It simply died because its heart was too good to be kept in just one body. It was outpaced by its own creation, leaving the car a ghost and the engine a myth.